निरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमो विष्णुपादाय राधिकायै प्रियात्मने श्रीमद्भक्तिवेदान्त नारायण गोस्वामिनिति नामिने। श्रीकृष्ण लीला कथने सुदक्षं औदार्य माधुर्य गुणैषयुक्तं वरं वरेण्यं पुरुषं महान्तं श्रीनारायणं त्वं शिरसा नमामि। त्रिदण्डिनां भक्तशिरोमणिं च श्रीकृष्णपादाब्जधृतये हृदि चैतन्यलीलामृतसारसारं नारायणं त्वं सततं प्रपद्ये। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। नमो महावदन्याय कृष्णप्रेमप्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्णचैतन्याय नाम्ने गौरत्विषे नमः। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कांता राधा कांता नमस्तुते। श्याम सुंदर शिखंड शेखर स्मेरहास मुरली मनोहर राधिका रसिक मां कृपा निधे स्वप्रिया चरण किंकरीं कुरु। गोवर्धन धरम वंदे गोपालं गोपरूपिणाम गोकुल उत्सव ईशानम गोविंदम गोपिका प्रियम तप्त कांचन गौरांगी श्री राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। तवैवास्मि न जीवामि त्वया विना इति विज्ञाय राधे तन्नय माम चरणन्तिके। भक्त्या विहीनापराधलक्षै क्षिप्ताश्च कामादितरङ्गमध्यै कृपामयि त्वं शरणं प्रपन्ना वृन्दे नमस्ते चरणारविन्दम्। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। So first of all, I offer my unlimited obeisances unto the divine lotus feet of my most worshipable spiritual master, His Divine Grace, Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. My unlimited obeisances to the divine lotus feet of Satchidanand Thakur Srila Bhaktivinoda, unto the lotus feet of our Rupanuga Guru Varga, and my respects to all the assembled devotees. So in this auspicious month of Purushottam, by the mercy of Shri Shri Guru and Gaurang, we are continuing the study of Jaiva Dharma. In the last class, this is the 7th chapter of Jaiva Dharma, which is called Nitya Dharma and Material Existence, which is also called Sansar in Sanskrit. So last time we discussed, let me share this, some very important points from this chapter. The questions were, why have we fallen into this illusory relationships of the material world? And Anantadas Babaji explained that those who are favorable to Krishna, they go to the spiritual world, but those who are inimical to him, they fall into the material world and identify with their body and all the different false relationships in the material world. Then he asked the question that even though we try to understand our true identity, and even if we try to attain it, why doesn't it really appear? And the answer was because of inappropriate endeavors. If we do the proper endeavor for any goal, then that goal must be achieved. But if we are doing inappropriate endeavors, then there is problem in realizing our goal. So then what are those inappropriate endeavors? The endeavors that are not related to bhakti. So for example, various ritualistic practices, the process of Brahmvad or Mayavad, Dhyan Yoga, Ashtang Yoga, so many different other types of meditations and processes that people follow. And he said those are inappropriate because the reason we are bound in the material world, the reason we have fallen into the material world is because of being inimical to the Supreme Lord. That is our original offense. And unless we submit to Him, unless we recognize Him and surrender unto Him, then any endeavor that we do is not for the getting the mood of submission to the Lord, right? All the other endeavors that we are doing, even those of Brahmvadis, where they say Aham Brahmasmi, that I am that supreme, I am Brahman. So that is just another version, another form of that original offense of being inimical to the Supreme Lord. So unless the endeavors are in the mood of surrender, in the mood of recognizing the supremacy of Shri Krishna, those endeavors are inappropriate, and therefore one does not attain one self-realization. So then what are the appropriate endeavors? He explained the appropriate endeavors are by associating with devotees, satsang, sadhu sang. Because even 1 second, 1/11th of a second of association with a pure devotee can help one come out of the ignorance of material entanglement. So sadhu sang, and second he said prapatti, which is surrender. So the mood of surrender. So unless these two things are there, that endeavor is not appropriate. So these are the proper endeavors. So then the question where we left last time was, Yadav Das, he asked that these sadhus, the saintly personalities, they are also in the material world. They also have physical bodies like us. And they also appear to have various physical needs. For example, they also feel hungry. They also sometimes fall sick. So it seems that they are also bound by the laws of material nature. They are also oppressed by the miseries of material existence. So how is it possible that they can help the other living entities become free from this entanglement? So a very interesting question. Sometimes this question comes to the mind of aspiring devotees. So Anantadas Babaji explained that even though, yes, they look like all others, they also have physical bodies, but there is a gulf of difference between their internal, even though externally they appear to be the same, but internally their mood is so different from those who are stuck in the material entanglement. How they are completely absorbed internally in Krishna. Whereas a materialist, the sense enjoys their internal, their mind is completely absorbed in Maya, in sense gratification. Therefore, they get disturbed, they get depressed, they get frustrated, they become anxious. Whereas a devotee of the Lord, he is always calm, peaceful, because he is directly in connection with the Lord at every moment. And he's constantly rendering devotional loving service both internally and externally. And he said such sadhus, such pure devotees are very rare. And therefore, A common man cannot recognize them. So then he explains that there are two categories of jivas, one who are completely absorbed in the insignificant worldly pleasures, and then there are those who are dissatisfied with the insignificant pleasures of Maya, and they employ finer discrimination in the hope of attaining a superior quality of happiness. So one was so absorbed, that's most of the people in the world, they don't even think that there is something that exists beyond the sense enjoyment. That's why their only goal in life is to enjoy as much as they can, because they think this is one life I have, so let me enjoy to the fullest. But then there are others who are dissatisfied with the material pleasures and they crave for something higher. They crave for higher level of happiness, a superior quality of happiness which is not temporary, which is not fleeting. So these two categories of people, the first one who are completely absorbed in sense enjoyment, they are called aviveki, meaning they lack the discrimination to understand what is the difference between gross matter and spiritual jiva, the spirit, difference between matter and spirit. The other category who aspire for higher happiness, for higher realization, they are called viveki, meaning they have the discrimination to see what is the difference between matter and spirit. So, and then he says that these second category, those who are vivekis, they are also sometimes called, they are also called mumukshus. So this is a Sanskrit word. Mumukshu means those who seek liberation. He says, when I say the word mumukshu, sometimes people think that this is referring to the impersonalists, but that is not the case, because mumukshus in the Vedic sense are those who are exasperated with the miseries of material existence and seek their true spiritual identity. So anyone who is aspiring for the higher truth is considered a mukshu, someone who is aspiring for liberation from the entanglement of material nature, from the entanglement of Maya. So here he says, so mumukshu comes from the word mumuksha, and mumuksha means the desire for liberation, for mukti. Now, this is where the difference is. So anyone who is desiring liberation is called mumukshu, aspiring for liberation is called mumukshu, but the desire for mukti is very prominent in the impersonalists and other types of sadhakas. But when one gives up the desire for mukti as well, then one enters into the realm of pure bhakti, shuddh bhakti. Because for a devotee, liberation is not that important. For him, the goal is not liberation. For him, the goal is loving service, rendering service to the Supreme Lord, to the beloved Lord in different rasas, whatever one's sthai bhav, one's mood is. So, Sri Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that when one gives up the desire for mukti also, then that person is in the realm of Shuddh Bhakti. Anya bhilashita shunyam jnana karmadya navritam anukulen Krishna anushilanam bhaktir uttama. This is the definition of pure bhakti given by Srila Rupa Goswami. That when one gives up all other desires, anya bhilashita shunyam, completely devoid of all other desires, gyan karmadi anavritam, of gyan which is not related to bhakti, all types of karma, and even the desire for mukti, and then engages with a favorable mood in service to Shri Krishna, that is called Uttama or Shuddh Bhakti. So he says, when a person who desires liberation gains knowledge of the truth of Krishna and the jivas, he is liberated at once. Now he explains, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, that how rare it is to find a devotee of Krishna. Why they are so rare. So he quotes from Srimad Bhagavatam, in the sixth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, in chapter 14, there is question by Maharaj Parikshit. This is where the narration of Vritrasur is there. So Vritrasur was a demon, and when he was being killed by the Lord's Chakra, he started offering such beautiful prayers to the Lord, such beautiful prayers. In fact, Srimad Bhagavatam is mentioned in the other Puranas, like in Agni Puran, in Skand Puran, saying that Puran in which the story of Vritrasur is explained, that Puran is Srimad Bhagavatam. So Srimad Bhagavatam is known by Vritrasur's story. That's how it is mentioned in the other scriptures. And that he's a demon. So Maharaj Parikshit asked that how is it possible that such a demon was was saying such beautiful prayers to the Lord. And there he says that how rare is a devotee of Krishna. So first he says, Rajobhi samha sankhyataha parthivahi ihi jantavaha. So Rajo means dust. So like the particles of dust, if we start counting the particles of dust on earth, is it possible to count? No, because there are unlimited. So it says similarly, like the particles of dust on earth, the number of living entities is unlimited. We may say, oh, there is 800 billion humans, but there are trillions and trillions more jivas just on earth. So many insects, so many plants, so many other animals, so many bacteria, microorganisms, unlimited living entities. And then think of the Brahmand, and then there are unlimited universes. So he says, Rajobi samah sankhyaataha. There is unlimited living entities. Tesham ye kechane hante shreha vahi manujadhaya. Out of those living entities, there are some very rare who attain the higher forms, such as that of Devas, the Gandharvas. And then very few of those also, shreha vahi manujadhaya, very few of them actually aspire for higher religious principles. And out of them, prayo mumukshvaha tesham kechan ev dvijutamaha, that amongst those who adopt higher religious principles, very few strive for mumuksha, for liberation. So even someone, those, first of all, very few people have interest. Krishna also says in Bhagavad Gita, Manushyanam sahasreshu kaschit yati siddhai. Out of millions and millions of humans, someone, first of all, out of unlimited living entities, there are some who are humans, and out of those humans, some try for kaschit yatati siddhai, some try for a higher purpose. They engage in religious practices. Even those religious practices for most of people are only for attaining some material benefits. So, and then out of those, very few actually aspire for liberation. Mumuksha nam sahasreshu kaschit muchyet siddhyati. And out of those who are aspiring for liberation, some may actually attain, kaschin muchyet siddhyati, some may actually attain the liberated stage. And then he says, Mukta nam api siddhanam narayanaha parayanaha. Out of those who have become liberated or who are siddhas, there is someone very rare who will be Narayanaha Parayanaha, who will be a devotee of Sri Narayan, of the Lord. And such a devotee is Sudurlabhaha. He is very, very rare. He's Prashant Atma. He's so peaceful, very calm, completely absorbed in the Lord, but very rare. Therefore, we see that so few people actually have interest in bhakti, and they are also in Shuddh bhakti, right? If right now there was any concert or any, sports league playing, right? There is FIFA going to happen here, and people are coming from all over the world, spending so much money to see these players play. But if Katha is arranged, right, Bhagavad Katha is arranged, or some great Vaishnava is speaking, Very few people, even though we don't charge anything to go and see all these sports events, you have to pay so much money. To come to the temple, neither any money is charged. On top of that, they get prasadam. Still, very few people want to come. So, this shows how rare it is. This is acknowledged in Srimad Bhagavatam. And then, out of those devotees of Narayan, very rare to find someone who's a devotee of Krishna, meaning who has a mood of Madhurya Bhav. So, worshippers of Lord Narayan are in the mood of opulence, Aishwarya Bhav. And then among the devotees of Krishna also, very rare to find someone who has an inclination towards Braj Bhakti. So, they may have inclination towards Krishna in Dwarka or in Mathura, but his inclination or the mood of the loving mood to serve Krishna in his Brajendra Nandan form. So, very, very rare. So, we can see how fortunate we are that by the mercy of our Guru Varga, by the mercy of Mahaprabhu, that we have come in this line, which is actually not very easy to get into. It's very rare. So, he says that such devotees, and he's talking of these devotees who are at this elevated stage, not those who are just mumukshus, but those who are Narayan Paraha. He says these type of devotees, if one gets their association, love matra sadhu sang, such devotees, then one can immediately be freed from the cycle of birth. And what does that mean? That process gets started right away. So such devotees, they remain in this world as long as the body endures, but their earthly existence is categorically different from that of the materialists. The bhaktas of Krishna live in this world in two conditions, as householders and as renunciants. So then he says that they live in two forms, and two conditions. He will explain this later, and that is going to be most of the discussion in today's class. But before that, Yadav Das asks that you have explained that there are four categories of people who possess spiritual insight. Out of these four, which type of association is considered sadhu sangha? So now he explains this even further in more detail. So, let's see. So, people with spiritual insights, the four categories. What are those? Viveki, Mukshu, Mukta, and Bhakta. So, we kind of discussed this in these verses from Srimad Bhagavatam. Viveki, those who have discrimination between what is gross matter and what is spirit. Mumukshu, those who are aspiring for liberation. And Mukta, those who are liberated. Now, they are also of two types. Those who have insatiable thirst for chitras. Chitras means for transcendental mellows. And then there are those who are impersonalists. And then bhaktas, and they are in two categories, either in the Aishwarya Bhav or in Madhurya Bhav. Now here, when describing about the impersonalists, he specifically says that those who are impersonalists, Nirbhed Mayavadis, those who say that the Supreme Absolute is formless without any qualities, he says they are offenders. They are offenders to the Supreme Lord, and we should not associate with them. So when he's qualifying with whom one can associate, one category he specifically points out one should never associate, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also, when speaking to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, said, Mayavad Bhasha Shunile Hai Sarvanash. That if one even hears from a Mayavadi, then Hai Sarvanash. Sarvanash means that the creeper of bhakti will be completely destroyed by associating with the impersonalist, especially when one is in the nascent stage of bhakti, when one has not become firmly established in the principles of Vaishnav Siddhanta, and then one can get swayed by the false logics and all the various arguments that the impersonalists give. And then he quotes from Srimad Bhagavatam, and this is a verse from the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, where the demigods are praying to Krishna, who is in the womb of Mother Devaki. So they are praying, Ye anya arvindaksh vimukta maninah tvai asta bhavaha avishuddha buddhayah aruhya kritrena param padam tatah patanti adho anadrit yushmat angrayah. So he says, Ye anya arvindaksh. Arvindaksh means a lotus-eyed Lord. Those who do not take shelter of your lotus feet, they vainly consider themselves to be liberated. They think that they are liberated, but they're actually not liberated. Why? So remember again, we discussed their endeavor is inappropriate. They have not surrendered to the one because of the offense to that Supreme Lord. We are stuck in the world, but because they are not surrendering to Him, not recognizing that original offense, even though they in their mind are thinking they're liberated, they're not actually liberated. So then what happens? Aruhya kirchen param padam tatah. So even though they attain param pad means what? They may attain sayujya mukti. They may merge into that transcendental effulgence, the Brahma Jyoti. But patanti adho anadrit yushmat andhra, because they are neglecting your lotus feet, because they are offenders to your lotus feet, they again come back to the material world. So that means even that mukti is not real liberation. That's why they think they are liberated, but they're actually not liberated still from the material entanglement. So then he says the fourth category is of the bhaktas, of the devotees that we just also saw on the slide. And they're of two types. Everyone knows Aishwarya, those who worship in the mood of in opulence, the majestic feature of the Lord. And then those who are in Madhurya, they are attracted to the Lord's sweet and intimate features. So in our Gaudiya Parampara, the mood is of Madhurya Bhav, and that also specifically the mood that the gopis, the manjaris have towards Sri Krishna as the maid servants of Srimati Radhika. Very, very rare to understand and achieve this mood. So he says that particularly if one takes shelter of those bhaktas who are immersed in Sri Hari's sweetness, the transcendental mellows of bhakti will manifest in one's heart. So to answer his question was, which type of sadhus, which type of people out of those four categories that you have described, one should aspire to associate with? He says, if one finds a devotee who is in Madhurya Bhakti, then one should certainly surrender unto the lotus feet of such a devotee, because Sudurlabha, such pure devotees are very, very rare to find. So then Yadav Das asks, so now you have explained that bhaktas live in two conditions. Kindly explain this clearly so that people like myself who have limited intelligence may understand easily. So then Anandas Babaji says there are two types of bhaktas. One, those who are householders, they are called Grihast Bhakta. And the other one are called Tyagi, means they have renounced household life. So one are householders. So out of the four ashrams, one ashram is of householders, and the other three are those who are renounced. So they are the brahmacharis, the vanprastha, and then the sannyasis. So now he explains the grihastha. So Anandas Babaji says that one does not become a grihastha, one does not become a householder simply by building a house and living in it. So householder does not mean that one is just holding a house. You've purchased a house, decorated and living in it. That from the Vedic perspective is not a householder. So what is a householder? He says the word griha in grihast refers to the household that one establishes by accepting a suitable wife or husband, a suitable spouse in marriage, according to Vedic rules and regulations. So the word grihast comes from two words, griha and stha. So stha means situated. So griha means house. So one who is situated in the house in a proper relationship. So whether it's a man with the wife and the wife with the husband, when they are married as per the Vedic principles, because when the Vedic marriage takes place, the all the mantras that are chanted, the fire sacrifice that is done, the whole yajna, it is a sanskar that is done, is for them to connect with each other, so they will help each other in their spiritual progress. So a bhakta who resides in such a condition and practices bhakti is known as a grihastha bhakta. But those who do not live according to this principle in Bhagavatam, they are called griha medhi. So it says the people in the world, they are bound by Maya in so many different ways. With our eyes, we see different forms, different colors. With our ears, we hear different sounds. With our nose, we smell different fragrances. So, like this, with all our knowledge acquiring senses, we are we are enjoying the world. So the jiva enters the material world through these five senses. So if these five senses are not there, then we will not perceive the material world. We will not perceive the objects of sense gratification. Someone who's blind does not get attracted to a beautiful man or a woman, right? Because he just can't see. Someone who does not have, let's say, his nasal problem is there, nose, and he cannot smell anything. So sometimes when you have a certain disease, when people had COVID, a lot of people had problem uh, smelling. They could not distinguish between different smells or different tastes. So then he's not attracted by that object. So it is through these five senses that we become attached to sense enjoyment. He says the more attached he is to the gross matter, the more distant he is from his Prananath, the Lord of his life, Shri Krishna, and his condition is called Bahirmukh Sansar, consciousness directed outward towards mundane existence. So this is he's describing the situation of those. Most of the people, we are also many times in similar situations, right? So where we are so attracted by various sense enjoyments. So he says the more one is attracted by those sense objects, the more distant he becomes from Shri Krishna. So such people are called Vishayis. But when bhaktas live as grihastha, they are not like the Vishayas. So this is where he's distinguishing between those people who live in a married life, but just to enjoy their senses. And that's why majority of the people get married, right? Just to enjoy. But in the Vedic system, the purpose of marriage was not to enjoy, but, and this he will explain in great detail, but to use that ashram to try and control one's senses in a controlled way. You enjoy some of the comforts of the householder life, but at the same time try to control and minimize them, and that's how slowly become renounced. That's why it's called ashram. So ashram in generally is a place where monks live, right? So when we go to India also, there are different ashrams are there. It's another word for monastery. So why is it called grihast ashram? Simply for this reason, because the real grihast ashram is when one lives in the house thinking this house belongs, not just thinking, believing with strong faith the house belongs to the Supreme Lord. That's why we have either the picture of the deities, or many devotees keep deities at their home, and the whole day, the whole house kind of revolves around serving the deities, right? So you are offering them puja, you're offering them bhog, and as you're making money, you're taking care of your family. But everyone gets together, chants, reads from the scriptures, and that's how the Vedic system was. We also, when we were young and seeing our grandparents, that's how most households were. That there was not hardly any avenues for sense enjoyment those days. I'm talking of 50 years ago, right? No televisions, nothing. So mostly people will spend their evenings sitting together, chanting, reading from Gita, from Ramayana. So he says, such grihasthas, they are not like Vishais who merely seek to gratify their senses. And what does a householder think? He thinks that my wife, she is a dasi, she is a servant, a maid servant of Krishna. And so are my sons and daughters. They are also the servants of the Lord. The eyes of all the family members are satisfied to behold the form of the deity. And they are hearing, as I was saying, right? They're chanting together, hearing the different kathas of the Lord, with their cooking for the Lord. So all the senses are engaged in serving the Lord, just like Maharaj Ambarish. So Maharaj Ambarish, he was the king, the emperor of Bharat Khand. So that time, pretty much the entire earth was considered Bharat Bhumi, which is now called India. And even though he was such a great emperor, but how was his household? Completely dedicated to serving the Lord. Sarvahi manah Krishna padar vindeho vachanse vakuntha gunanu varnane. So his mind was constantly engaged in the lotus feet of the Lord. And with his tongue, with his words, he was constantly glorifying Vaikuntanath, Shri Krishna, the Lord. Karau Hare Mandir Marjanadishu. And even though such a great emperor who had so many servants, but with his own hands, he will clean the temple of the Lord. In fact, this is the best service. Many other services when we do, there's some possibility of becoming some pride creeping in, right? You can be a good kirtaniya, you can be someone who speaks very nice harikatha or does nice shringar. Some pride can creep in. But when we clean the temple, go and clean the utensils, that is, in fact, the best seva. Srila Prabhupada would say, the more we clean, the more the dirt in our heart gets cleansed away. So, Karo Hare Mandir Marjanadishu, Maharaj Ambarish with his own hands will clean the temple of the Lord. Shrutim Chakar Achut Sat Katha Uday. And then with his ears, he will hear the Katha of the Lord. Then with his limbs, with his hand, he will touch or serve the devotees of the Lord. With his nose, he would smell the flowers offered to the Lord. So, like this, all his senses were engaged in serving the Lord. So, he's saying, like this, a grihast householder uses all his senses in serving the Lord. Indeed, their entire life is a great festival consisting of Krishna Nam, mercy to Jiva, and service to Vaishnavas. Jivar Daya Krishna Nam Sarva Dharma Sar. Bhaktivinoda Thakur sings in one of his bhajans that the essence of religion is Jivar Daya Krishnam, showing mercy to the Jivas. What mercy? Seeing that people in the world are suffering because of ignorance. Then, even as a householder, one is engaged in preaching, trying to help the preaching mission of the Guru Varga, inviting devotees and others, serving prasadam, so many different activities. So, Jivar Daya Krishna, and chanting the names of Krishna, Sarv Dharmasar, this is the essence of all religions. Everything that we are studying, everything we are doing, this is the essence of it. That our heart should become very soft. We should see the suffering of the people and make effort to try and take this message to them. And then constantly chanting the names of Hari. He says, only Grihastha Bhaktas can possess material objects and utilize them without becoming attached to them. It's most appropriate for Jivas in the age of Kali to become Grihastha Vaishnavas, for then there is no fear of falling down. So now he makes a very interesting statement. I'll read it again. It is most appropriate for jivas in the age of Kali to become Grihastha Vaishnavas, for then there is no fear of falling down. So he's saying in this age of Kali, it is best for most people to become householder devotees, because then there is no fear of falling down. What does falling down mean? If one is a celibate, one is a sannyasi, because the senses are so uncontrolled, because we have so much forms and shapes of Maya all around us in today's world, then if one is not very strong, then he may fall down from that very elevated position. Now, this is the point to understand what Bhaktivinoda Thakur is actually saying. He's not saying that Grihast ashram is the highest. He's not saying that. He's not even saying that everyone should just be only a Grihastha. He's not even saying that. He's saying for most of the people, for most appropriate, for most jivas in the age of Kali, it is better to be a Grihastha. Now, Shri Gurudev, to explain what Bhaktivinoda Thakur's intent is, has given a very, very elaborate footnote or commentary on this one line. And this runs into several pages. Those, if you have a copy of Jaiva Dharma, you can see this. And I'll try to summarize what Shri Gurudev is saying. I would request everyone should study this footnote or the detailed commentary given by Shri Gurudev, because many times this argument comes that whether one should accept sannyas or not, whether should one only stay in the householder life, and there are verses quoted from the scriptures and sometimes the meaning is not properly understood. So the essence of what Shri Gurudev is explaining and what Bhaktivinoda Thakur is also saying, the essence is, and then we will try to discuss with some specific points that Gurudev mentions, but the essence is that sannyas ashram is the highest, right? And we will quote some verses from Srimad Bhagavatam. So sannyas ashram is the highest, no doubt about it, right? But because in the age of Kali, most people are not qualified to be in such an elevated stage. Therefore, for them to go through the purificatory process, being a householder, a grihast ashram is better, because staying there, they slowly will get purified and develop the mood of detachment to material relationships and sense enjoyment. Because the purpose of Vedas is not to engage us in sense enjoyment. The purpose of the Vedas is to make us detached from sense enjoyment. Why would Vedas want us to become more entangled? Because of that entangled, in the first place, we are suffering in the material world. So why would they want us to become more entangled? And in householder life, typically one becomes more entangled. But in a controlled way, one lives in a householder life according to the Vedic principles. See, that's the most important point to understand. Mostly people don't understand what are the Vedic principles to live in a householder life, and therefore they just become totally vishayas. But if one lives according to the Vedic principles, then one will certainly develop slowly detachment and become qualified to enter the higher ashrams like the Vanprastha and then sannyas. So this is the essence of what Shri Gurudev is explaining, and then he quotes from here that there a verse from first of all from Vishnu Puran, where he says that by any ashram, by following any ashram, one can worship the Lord whichever ashram one is in. But out of the 4 ashrams, which ashram is considered the highest? So Krishna himself is describing this to Uddhav in Srimad Bhagavatam. In the 17th chapter of the 11th canto, verse 14, this is part of Uddhav Gita. He says, Griha ashramo jaghanato brahmacharyam hridomam vakshah sthalat vane vasah sannyasah shirasi sthitah. That the grihast ashram has sprung from the thighs of my universal form, and the brahmachari ashram from my heart. And so the heart is higher than the thighs. And then from the chest, the Vanpras ashram has manifested, and the sannyas has manifested from my head. So the head is the highest, right? So therefore, that is considered the highest ashram. And in the next verse, right after this in Srimad Bhagavatam, it says, Varnanam ashramanam cha janma bhumi anusarinihi asan prakrityo nrinam nichahe nich uttam matah maha. So what that means is that according to where an ashram has manifested from the transcendental body of the Supreme Lord, that determines whether that ashram is higher or lower, just like the different varnas. So because the sannyas has manifested from his head, that is considered the highest ashram. Right? So therefore, there is no question about it that sannyas ashram is the highest. Now, but because it is, so then here Gurudev gives another very important point. He says, another point is that not all the followers of the author, Sri Bhaktivinoda Thakur, are Grihast Bhaktas. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur himself was Grihast, but then he took Vanpras, he took the renounced order, but in those days they would not accept the saffron cloth. But then many of his followers were brahmacharis, and some have given up household life and are situated in the highest order sannyas. So his own son, Shri Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada, he accepted the renounced order of life. Actually, after Sriman Mahaprabhu accepted sannyas, but in recognition or in reverence to the sannyas that he had taken, most of his followers for many generations did not accept the saffron cloth. Neither the six Goswamis or Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur or Narottam, none of them, many of them were householders. And those who stayed renounced did not accept the saffron cloth. But Shri Bhaktisiddhanta, who is an eternal associate, a maidservant of Srimati Radhika, he's an eternal associate of the Lord. He established the sannyas within the Gaudiya Parampara for the purpose of preaching worldwide. So he accepted the saffron cloth, and then he made many sannyasis. There were stalwart sannyasis and very, very renounced, very, very fixed in their renunciation. And even today we see so many sannyasis, right? So it's not that nobody can be a sannyasi. That's the point he's trying to explain, that many followers of Sri Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Bhaktivinoda Dhara are also sannyasis. And in this third chapter, these two verses I have just shown from Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhaktivinoda Thakur also quotes these in the previous chapters to say that sannyas ashram is the highest. So when Bhaktivinoda Thakur in this particular chapter is saying about Grihast ashram, that that's the best, he's again saying simply for the reason that in Kali Yuga, because of so many distractions and so powerful force of Maya, for most people, it is safe to stay in Grihast ashram till they become renounced. Shri Gurudev would say that when a leaf becomes dry, when on the tree, then it automatically falls down, right? When the fall season comes, or even otherwise, when the leaf dries, it falls down. Nobody has to pluck it. So his point was that when one becomes renounced, when one becomes detached, then he will automatically give up everything. And in fact, in our Gaudiya Siddhanta, in the line of bhakti, the more importance is given to that internal detachment, not the external. One can be a householder and be completely detached, And one could be wearing externally the saffron cloth, but be very attached. And in India also, when you see, there are many, many people who are wearing saffron cloth, but engaged in all kind of abominable activities. So the color of the cloth does not determine how detached or attached a person is. So here he says that men of lower nature who are inclined to engage in fruitive action are compelled to become grihasthas. So that's generally the case when people are and desiring sense enjoyment, and that's true. That's when you get into a relationship of marriage. But those who are nashtik brahmacharis, those who adopt a lifelong vow of celibacy, are the wealth of Shri Krishna's heart. So those who are from beginning, there are those who like Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada, and then we have many other brahmacharis even today who have maintained this brahmacharya very steadfast, and then from brahmachari they have become sannyasis. So certainly there are people who, because of their previous sanskars, because of their strong mood of surrender at the lotus feet of Sri Guru and Krishna, they're able to maintain the complete detachment and stay very fixed in devotional service. So then he explains another important point that and that the other point I was in the beginning saying, that the purpose of the Vedas, and he gives here the example of meat eating. So for example, in the scriptures, in the Vedas, some places, there is provision for meat eating. There is provision for drinking wine. Like this, certain provisions are there. So in certain types of worship you do, you can offer wine and then have it. You can offer flesh. But why is that provision there? So he quotes here from Srimad Bhagavatam, and he says that in this world, this is again from the 11th canto, 5th chapter. This is the dialogue between Maharaj Nimi and the Navayogendras, where he says, I'll read the translation of the verse. In this world, it is observed that people have a natural tendency towards sexual enjoyment, meat eating, and intoxication. Shastra cannot sanction engagement in such activities, but special provisions have been given whereby some association with the opposite sex is permitted through marriage, some eating of flesh is permitted through performance of sacrifice, and drinking of wine is permitted in the ritual known as Satramani Yajna. The important point is this: the purpose of such injunctions is to restrain the licentious tendencies of the general populace and to establish them in moral conduct. So many restrictions are given, so many processes defined. That's why I'm saying, if one stays in household but follows the Vedic injunctions, and if they do based on the way it is described, then even by engaging in some of these activities, slowly they will become detached. So the purpose is, because the person is so absorbed in this, so much in the mode of ignorance, then somehow to pull them out, they are engaged indirectly in some Vedic ritual, whether it's the sacrifice of an animal, but that animal has to be old. There has to be only sacrificed at a certain time. A particular yajna has to be performed. Many, many different regulations are there. So therefore, the intrinsic purpose of the Vedas in making such provision is to draw people away from such activities altogether. So this has been cited by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur also, and he in this commentary he explains the same thing, that the purpose of the scriptures is to slowly bring people to the quality of goodness. The intent of the Vedas is to provide a means whereby human beings who have not adopted the quality of goodness and thus renounce the tendency for violent sexual enjoyment and intoxication can curb such tendencies and satisfy their demands through the agency of religion. So then a couple other points that Srila Gurudev explains, that therefore the Grihast ashram is necessary in Kali Yuga in order to draw people away from the path of fruitive action and towards the path of renunciation. Therefore, as we were in the beginning saying, what is Grihastha? When one accepts a wife, he does not see the wife as an object for his enjoyment. And similarly, the wife does not see the husband as someone to enjoy physically with, but he sees the wife as a maidservant of Krishna. And similarly, the wife sees the husband as a servant of the Lord, and they help each other. And this is the ideal Vaishnav household. And this is what our Guru Varga, Srila Prabhupada, and everyone strived to establish, because in Kali Yuga again, it's the household, an ideal household, which is the basic unit of society. So if they are ideal, each household is ideal, following Krishna consciousness, then the whole society will become ideal and peaceful. So, here he says, I accept this maid servant of Krishna, so the husband, and same thing with the wife, so that we may be able to assist each other in the service of Krishna. This attitude is favorable to bhakti. Consequently, those who marry, so like this, you can have, some may decide not to have children, some may decide to have children. But if you have children, then again, the mood is that the Lord has entrusted us with these children, and it is our responsibility to bring them up as devotees. So, so here he says the word putra, son, is derived from the word put, which refers to particular hellish planet, and tra is derived from the verbal root meaning to deliver. Thus, the traditional significance of the word putra, which means son, is to beget a son who can deliver one from hell by offering oblations after one's demise. So this is the ritualistic understanding. However, there is no possibility that Vaishnavas who regularly chant Sri Harinam will go to the hell known as Put. Therefore, they do not desire putras but servants of Krishna. So and this is called the Garbhadhan Sanskar, when the child is conceived, so there is a whole process described. And if one follows that process, the mood is that I want to bring a servant of the Lord, a son or a daughter, as my child into this world. So for that, there is a Garbhadhan Sanskar that is done. So, and this actually shows up in the consciousness of the children as well. So the whole Vedic system is very, very scientific, very scientifically designed to help us slowly make every aspect of our life Krishna conscious, connect everything to Krishna. So, here finally, Srila Gurudev says, although the Grihastha ashram is the lowest of the four ashrams, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has recommended it with the desire to benefit everyone in the world. Okay, that's the purpose. That's why he is recommending, because most people will not be able to be renounced. Now, one other point which Gurudev explains, that it is also important that one should understand that still the sannyas or the brahmacharya ashram, these are still, if one can be renounced, that is still better. But sometimes we see that even sannyasis and brahmacharis don't understand this point, and they will either give up their sannyas or brahmacharya ashram, or they will encourage others also to give up and become householders. That's why one should accept these ashrams very carefully, right? And not simply out of emotion, or not simply, because if I am wearing saffron, then everyone will follow me and I will be worshipped. Not with that. That saffron means complete detachment, complete renunciation. So he says that such people who encourage such others to give up their brahmacharya sannyas, and in contravention to Shastra marry one of their disciples, a god sister or some other woman, or were to advise another brahmachari or sannyasi to do so, then such a pitiable base An atheistic person would indeed be rare in the history of the world. A second point is that it is highly disgraceful for unqualified people to adopt the dress of a brahmachari or a sannyasi, to imitate their behavior, and to consider themselves equal to great personalities in those ashrams. Then he quotes, he says, there are examples of Shrigal Vasudev, a jackal who impersonated Sri Krishna. So this is a story that is given in Srimad Bhagavatam, also in Chaitanya Bhagavat, in Harivansh. So this this jackal, he was one time hunting for some prey, came into a village, and many dogs there started chasing him. So he started running for his life, and then he went inside a house which was the person who used to dye clothes, and he jumped into a big container which had blue color in it, and when he came out, he was completely bluish in color. Now this wolf, he comes out in bluish color, and then he goes into the, when he saw his himself, he himself was amazed. But when he went very into the jungle, he saw that all the other animals were scared of him and started bowing in front of him. Even the lion, the tiger, the elephant, because they had never seen someone blue like this. So he said, oh wow, this is great. So then he stood up and he said, oh, I am Krishna, I am the Supreme Lord, because he's bluish in color, and everyone should serve me. Now everyone started coming and rendering service unto him. So one day he was sitting in his court like the king, all the tigers, the elephants, everyone else, and he made sure that all the other jackals were driven out of the forest. So one time when he was sitting, from a distance, there was a group of jackals. They were what sound they make. They were making their sound, and because internally inside he's actually a jackal, hearing this, he also started making sounds like them, and then his cheating was exposed. So the tiger, the lion, immediately pounded on him and killed him. So what this narration is given in the scriptures, that one should not become fake like them. So the point that was explaining before, just wearing an outside color, one does not become a sannyasi. Actual sannyas, actual renunciation is from the heart. So the path of the Shastras is, the purpose of the Shastras is to guide all the living beings towards a path of detachment. And finally, there is one verse that Sri Gurudev quotes from Brahm Vaivart Puran, and this verse is quoted a lot by different people to justify that sannyas should not be taken in Kali Yuga. This verse says, Ashwamedham Gavalambham Sannyasam Palpaitrikam. So 5 things are prohibited in Kali Yuga, and the first one is Ashwamedha Yagya, and then offering of a cow in the sacrifice, and then sannyasam, acceptance of sannyas. So this verse from Brahm Vaivart Puran is quoted many times to say that one should not accept sannyas. And what Gurudev clarifies in the commentary, that what it is forbidding is the sannyas taken by the Mayavadis, which is called the Ek Dand sannyas. But because that's an artificial sannyas, that is not described in the scriptures, but Tridanda sannyas, which is the Vaishnav sannyas, the true sannyas, that is not prohibited. And we see in this Kali Yuga only, the acharyas from all the Vaishnav paramparas, Ramanujacharya from Sri Sampradaya, he took sannyas. Madhvacharya from our Sampradaya, Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya, he took sannyas. And Sri Vishnu Swami, he also took sannyas. So did Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Tridanda sannyas is not prohibited. What is prohibited is the sannyas, the Ekdand sannyas, that is taken by the impersonalists. And here he describes that the Tridand Sannyas symbolizes three features. So there are three small sticks in that dand that the sannyasis carry. So they symbolize savior, the object of service, sevak, the servitor, and seva, the service. And this sannyas is perfectly fine to be taken and is considered the highest of all the ashrams. So this is try to give this in summary. Again, I would suggest please try and read this very detailed commentary by Shri Gurudev to explain this very important point. We will stop here and then okay, sorry, one other point here. So let's complete the this particular question. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that bhakti can also be developed fully from this position. So remember, he was talking about grihasthas or householder Vaishnavas. So he says that even a grihasth Vaishnav can be a guru, one who is well versed in fundamental truths of the Shastra. So again, in the Vaishnav Gaudiya principle, the guru is not necessarily someone who is a sannyasi, because again the renunciation is from the heart. And Mahaprabhu also said, Kiba Vipra Kibanyasi Shudra Kene Hoy, Ye Krishna Tattvaveta Say Guru Hoy. That one may be a Brahman, one may be a Shudra, one may be a sannyasi. But one who understands Krishna Tattvaveta, one who understands the principle of Krishna consciousness, one who understands Krishna by Tattva, the fundamental truth of Sri Krishna, he is qualified to become a guru. And then, of course, one who has control on all the urges, the six urges that Rupa Goswami, Vacho Vegam, Manasa Krodh Vegam, Jiva Vegam, Udar Upastha Vegam. So anyone who has control on all these urges is qualified to become a guru. So he says that if association of Grihastha Bhakta is particularly beneficial for the jivas. So this discussion will continue. Next time we will continue discussing the Grihastha and the renounced devotees in more detail next time. So we'll stop here. Thank you, everyone. And let's see if anyone has any questions.
I have a question for you, Prabhuji. As always, thank you for the class. I've heard you say this on more than one occasion. You said that our first, I'm going to say sin, for lack of a better word, is our inimical attitude toward Krishna. And even though the jivas come from the marginal potency of Krishna, what is it there that would make a jiva choose the material world over Krishna? Or what would make one be inimical to Krishna in that position if we can see both the spirit world and the material world?
That's the independent choice that the jiva has. So it is the independent choice because Krishna is supremely independent. And since in quality we are the same as him, we also have independence. That independence to choose whether we want to be favorable to him or we want to be inimical to him. Now, and see, just like, so there was a time in the past, but even today, right? If we, what happened with us in time immemorial, we can see a reflection of that even in our life today, right? So there is a choice that we have at every moment. Every individual in this world has that choice. And people make the choice. They make the choice not to be religious. They make the choice to just enjoy the world. Many people know that we will die one day. Most people also know that there is probably hell and heaven. Even whatever religion they're following, this concept exists everywhere. And certain things are not recommended, but still people make the choice to enjoy, right? So to be inimical to the Lord. So this independent choice is the reason why some decide, right? So now, of course, the example is given like on a sword, right? If you throw mustard seeds, some will fall on one side, some will fall on the other side. Now, why some fell on one side, some fell on the other side? That's the independent choice. Some decided to go this side, some decided to go the other side.
Yes, I understand.
Yeah. So the only way to see, I know, kind of understand or is to see in our own life, right? Even when, as aspiring devotees, when we also know what is right and what is not right, even then sometimes we don't make the right decisions, right choices. So that independence is always there. The guru tells, do this, don't do this, but we still, so many times people end up doing things which we are not supposed to do. So that independent choices is an inherent quality of the jiva.
But those jivas are all the same, technically, in essence. In essence, they are all the same. Those that chose to go with Krishna and those that chose to come to the material world.
Yes. Constitutionally, they are all the same.
Mm.
Right? Just like from a physiological perspective, all humans are the same, right? Irrespective of how they look, or tall, short, lean, fat, different colors. They're from a biological perspective, they're all the same, but different people choose to do different things. Uh, Anyone else? Any question or comment?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu.
Thank you for a nice class. Please forgive me for being late. I'm very glad I got to catch the end of it. As far as this, the feelings of enmity toward the Lord, this is part of also like the development or coming to some purification, isn't it? To realize like, no, wait, like I'm actually being inimical to the Lord with most of my thoughts and most of my deeds, myself personally. And then like, constantly trying to lord myself over material nature, not just, externally, but also internally, the thoughts. And that's part of the process of purification, is to realize that, after a while we can't look away from it, that maybe we're doing things that are completely contrary to respecting things as the Lord's property. Is that correct?
Yeah, see, so your question is, this realization is part of purification, right?
Yes.
That what I'm doing is not. Yes. See, the more our conscience starts pricking us, right? Sometimes, see, someone who's a totally engrossed in sense enjoyment, his conscience doesn't prick him when he does something wrong, right?
Yes.
But as one comes to bhakti, then slowly it starts, hurting you. No, this is not right. I should not do it. I should not do it. I should not do it. You may still do it, but then every time you do it, you feel, no, this is wrong. And then when that becomes very strong, right? If one does not get swayed away by the powerful force of senses, if one continues practicing devotional service, then at one point, you will feel that, no, how wretched I am, just like Bilvamangal Thakur, right? So first, the prostitute scolded him that how attached you are to this body, that his own father had passed away. Still, he was so infatuated by the prostitute, he crossed a river that was flooded, and taking on the corpse of his own son or father, crossed the river, and a snake hanging from the balcony of this prostitute's house, when thinking it was a rope, went inside. So he felt, oh, how fallen I am. And he immediately left. He said, I will go and renounce everything. But on the way, he felt thirsty, and he saw some ladies were there at the a well drawing water, and he asked for some water, and then looked at that lady, and again he was attracted. Then he felt so bad that my eyes are getting attracted by this physical beauty of women. So then followed that lady to his house and then said, can you give me 2 pins? And she's, did not know why he was asking. She asked her husband. He said, oh, this is some mendicant. He's asking for these 2 pins. She brought, and he poked his eyes with those 2 pins. So he says, these eyes are giving me the trouble. Of course, we are not at that level. But the point is, he felt so bad, so ashamed of himself, that he said, let me get rid of these eyes. And then his internal eyes opened. And then Krishna came himself, held his hand to take him to Vrindavan. Bilmangal Thakur wrote, Krishna Karnamrit. Krishna will come himself to hear this beautiful composition, Krishna Karnamrit. So yes, this is part of, the purification process.
And I guess the second question was, so if we're, say, frustrated or something in our process, and we decide, oh, I'm going to get married, this is going to be better for me, that's like jeopardizing our relationship with the Lord. Because like if I'm upset or if I'm not satisfied, say, with my process of trying to become Krishna conscious and get purified and things like this, if I'm not satisfied, bringing another person into it is not going uh, to aid my process any, is it? Like I'd have to be like at least taking shelter of a guru and be nishta to like say, okay, now I'm thinking about entering household life. It shouldn't be like a means to the process of trying to attain bhakti, right?
Yeah.
Does that make
So
sense?
see, again, if the goal is, every person has to see, yes, I'm not able to control. Some people just need a partner in their life because they can't, stay in a mutt. Everyone is different,
Hmm.
and people say, oh, I just need a company. But if you decide to get after coming to Krishna consciousness, if you decide to get married, as Bhaktivinoda Thakur was explaining, one should try and marry someone who is a devotee.
Oh, too.
And many times, I've seen in my 40 years in this line, many times, people, even initiated devotees, they go and get married to someone who's not initiated.
Yeah.
And this is after coming to Krishna consciousness. And it can go either way. The other person, there are many examples. The other spouse becomes a devotee, because if you are yourself very strong, the other person will become a devotee. But if you are weak, then you will get swayed away. So there are
Hmm.
people who completely give up bhakti. So if one is sincere and understanding one's need or internal weakness for companionship, under the guidance of Guru and Vaishnav, gets married to someone who is the right person and devotee or very favorable to bhakti, then this can all, and then make sure that stay together in the process of bhakti. It's not a license, because again, I've seen, and I'll be very candid about it, there are people who after getting married, now they have an excuse, oh Prabhu, now I'm married, I have so many household things, now I can't do the seva anymore.
Hmm.
So marriage should not be a license to give up your services to Guru, to the temple, to Guru Parampara. It should actually be to increase the seva. As together now, husband wife, you can do more seva. So if the
Right.
goal is really to become advanced in Krishna consciousness, then you will actually see, because Krishna ultimately he's guiding everything, right, as per your desire. So if the desire is sincere, then actually marriage will become very fruitful in terms of making spiritual progress. But if the desire is not sincere, then the results will not be the same.
Thank you, Prabhu. This is a good answer.
Okay.
Hare Krishna.
Okay. So thank you everyone once again. Ashok Prabhu, you had something?
No, Prabhuji. I just wanted to thank you for the
Okay.
excellent class.
Okay. Thank you everyone. We'll meet next Sunday. Hare Krishna. Gaur Premanande. Hari Hari
Hari
Bol.
Hari Bol.